Welcome back to the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I am super excited to be joined by Sean Rosensteel, a Chicago native and a lifelong entrepreneur and the founder of Savvy Pro Web, a company that builds professional websites and increase credibility, generates leads, and wins clients, because that's what we all want to do. So Sean, welcome to Get Down to Business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you.
Absolutely. So I like to get to know the person behind the microphone. I know that you have had your ups and downs in business, and if you're comfortable talking about it, I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first business I started went bankrupt 3 years in. So I learned a lot of very valuable lessons. I actually have a degree in entrepreneurship, thought I knew everything coming out of school, and quickly realized how much I didn't know. And I'm still taught that today, but yeah, it was a very interesting experience. Hired someone who promised they could, hit the growth goals that I had in mind. And that was a very negligent, poor decision on my part. And it eventually led to bankruptcy. The only thing I knew how to do back then was build and market websites. So I figured, okay, strike one, I'll take another at bat. And that was about 14 years ago now. And my wife and I actually co-founded the company. We've been doing it ever since.
Your wife, Karen, and hopefully your three beautiful children will join you perhaps in business at some point. But again, I'm chatting with Sean Rosensteel from Savvy Pro Web. And after that rebound story, now has become the subject matter expert on, again, helping companies, small businesses as well, build professional websites that help them grow as well. So Sean, tell us, why is Savvy Pro Web different? Why should our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. We take a radically different approach. We rarely talk tech talk or any of that stuff. And we're really tuned into what the entrepreneur client wants out of their website. Oftentimes websites are meant to support business goals, right? 10 times out of 10, that's what websites do. They should act as curb appeal for your business. And oftentimes we get it so wrong because we overcomplicate matters. We put way too much technology, way too much content, and we really confuse and lose our visitors. And ultimately, we make our websites all about our companies. And it's sort of like when you go out on a date, right? You ever been to a date where the other person on the other side of the table does nothing but talk about themselves the whole time? You're just looking for the check. So oftentimes in business, we make that mistake, frankly, across all of our sales and marketing collateral, but especially our website. And by the time we're done with it, years later, after we've launched and added so much content, it just looks like we're doing nothing but talking about ourselves and our companies. So what we really need to do is we really need to position our visitor as the hero in their story, because it is all about them. We need to talk about their problems a little bit more. We need to empathize a little bit more about what they're going through, and ultimately put them first in front of us and position our businesses as the guide or the thought leader in their story, if you will. And the moment we can do that, everything changes.
I'm learning a lot over here, and certainly our listeners are as well. And you're preaching gospel over here in terms of the power of a good website, and certainly you and your team create fantastic websites indeed, so much so that you have created an ebook, which we'll share with our listeners in a couple of minutes. But, if you search right now, if you just Google, building a website and so on, there's a lot of things that'll pop up. Probably some good resources that you can learn, but probably a lot of things that can cost entrepreneurs a lot of money. And I know you've learned your lesson of people that promise things and don't deliver. What are some of those mistakes that you've seen entrepreneurs make that hopefully they can avoid by listening to you and your team?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the number one mistake is hiring a web vendor that says yes to everything. Because a lot of us entrepreneurs have, we have 9 bad ideas and one really good one, right? Sometimes it's 99 bad ideas and one good idea, but we have a lot of ideas along the way. And what we need that web vendor to do, or that web agency to do, is really define the scope of the project well, really discover what we want out of the website, and then hold us accountable to that initial vision. What happens with website projects, and it's a bit of an epidemic, is you start the project, you have a scope in mind, and then a few weeks or months down the road, and this thing turns into a Frankenstein monster. And what happens is it never gets done. So we need our web partners to help us identify the scope, hold us accountable, not be afraid to say no, and push things back and say that can be a phase 2 item. It's a brilliant idea, Mr. Client, but let's hold off because we're risking blowing the deadline. We have this deadline, we both agree to it, let's stick to it, and let's hold off on any of these other things until after we cross the finish line. Because what's going to happen is if we keep adding to the scope, of course, we're going to miss it and we may never launch this thing. So that's probably the number one thing I see. And the next thing I see is vendors don't really do a great job most times of discovering what the ROI looks like for the client. As an entrepreneur, everything I do that relates to sales and marketing, I have to have some sort of an ROI expectation with that activity. Websites are no different. If I'm going to invest in a new website, I need to know what sort of an ROI I can expect out of it. Because sometimes we hire a web company and we spend tens of thousands of dollars on something and it doesn't generate the results that we want. So we need to make sure that the vendor is aware of and asking the right questions to determine, okay, what's your average client lifetime value? How long's your sales cycle? They need to know some of the sales data and what the existing website is currently doing as far as visitors per month, leads per month, how many leads does it take to close a deal? We need to know all of that stuff in order to determine what sort of an ROI the client can get.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like if only there was a place where you can do a website opportunity cost calculation to discover what an underperforming website can truly cost your business. Oh, wait. Actually, again, our guest over here, Sean Rosensteel, and his team at Savvy Pro Web, they've got that immediately upon visiting their website. The website is savvyproweb.com. And I know that you and your team are fond of saying that your website should be a 24/7 sales machine, even when you might be resting, your website is actually selling. So can you provide any really good examples of a success story, a business that you've been able to take from place A and really move along and really do what perhaps the entrepreneur may have not even been able to imagine in their wildest dreams?
Yeah. We just got done with a really fun project. It was actually a top producing real estate company out of the Chicagoland area, multiple offices, about 100 agents. We just redid their website, and I heard back from the owner about 3 weeks after they launched, and they said that they had 10x'd their investment in a matter of only 3 weeks. So that's a bit of an outlier, to be honest. We usually don't hear that anyone 10x's their investment within a month or less, but that was a really neat success story that we heard, and we get that information all the time as far as clients, because what happens is we already have visitors on our website. And as entrepreneurs, we want to go after all the shiny things. We want to play offense. We want to invest in ads and traffic and all this stuff. But we most likely already have some existing visitors on our website. It's like the Acres of Diamonds story. It's like everything we need is right under our nose based on all the activities and all the efforts we've already done. So how are we doing with our existing website visitors? And if we're not satisfied with our conversion rate, if we're not getting enough leads as it is, why go out and invest money in more traffic? It's just going to result in the same net outcome. So what's neat about this group is they didn't invest in traffic or marketing or any sort of offense. They just invested in defense. So they launched a new website that delivers them real results and generates them a lot more leads than their old website used to. And they literally 10x their investment in 3 weeks. So we love to hear stories like that.
Love to hear stories like that, and you love to help businesses. Again, coming from your own experience as an entrepreneur, and you've discovered what fellow entrepreneurs and business owners are looking for, and that's why when I know anybody gives you a call or gets on your website, you are not giving them the tech talk. You pride yourself on that simple process. So we're running out of time over here. Again, I've been chatting with Sean Rosensteel, and I want to make sure all of our listeners can find you on the web and get in touch. Sean, what's the best way of contacting you?
Yeah, thanks so much. So savvyproweb.com is our web address. That, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, that website opportunity cost calculator is there. We offer that to anyone who needs it. If you ever need any help with discovering some of the data that you'll need to input into the calculator to get the right outputs, we're happy to help with that. Very simple, takes 5 minutes. Also, LinkedIn's probably the only network that I'm somewhat active on.
Well, you got your hands full, three kids and your wife in business with you. Absolutely. Sean, really appreciate you joining us. And definitely, I know that it will be time well spent for anybody that wants to get on savvyproweb.com, not just to, of course, start the transformation process for their own business, but also just learn what works. And I know you and your team are scouring the latest data to make sure that you're creating websites that work. Again, Sean, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. After the break, I'm going to continue our conversation with more small business jobs and entrepreneurship. I'm going to be sharing some advice after these headlines. A quick commercial break. Don't touch that dial. Chicago, you're listening to Get Down to Business. We'll be right back.